Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Monday, September 25th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network, and you can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I'm joined as always by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Ruhnke. JT, how are you?
I'm good. It was one of the most slates of NFL football I've ever seen in my entire life today.
Of all of the slates,
It was
it
one
sure
of them.
was one of them. Yeah.
Some ugly games, some good games, some more ugly games,
Somebody
and
scored 70 points.
yeah, but
The FBI needs to raid Mike McDaniel's house for crimes against humanity. I mean, I know that they're dealing with stuff in Chicago right now. Miami should be the next. Come on, Mike. Those people have families. But by the time he got to 70, to then not go all the way and get the scoring record, what are we doing? Okay,
I don't know. That's one of my questions that I have, as well as, is this Travis Kelce Taylor Swift thing just a front?
Like a PR stunt?
Is it a PR stunt?
Maybe, I don't know. I mean,
in this week's investigative journal, I will.
Yeah, we'll get to those things at a later date. Unfortunately, we have to talk today about the Titans.
They played?
They were a part of a game in which they technically showed up, but they lost 27-3 in Cleveland, rather, to the Browns. And we're here to talk all about what was a complete and utter failure to launch today for the Titans. They dropped to 1-2 on the season, and this was easily their worst outing so far. We're going to break it down from as many different angles as we possibly can. If you're watching with us live, appreciate you. Help us out by liking this post or liking the YouTube video, hitting that retweet button. Whatever you can do to help us get as many eyeballs on the show as possible would be considered a personal favor. And while you're at it, if you're watching on Twitter or on Facebook, head on over to the YouTube page, Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. You'll find the live stream there, and that's where you can be a part of the conversation in the comments like Kenneth and Joey already are. Appreciate you guys being with us today. I typically have, for our game recap episodes, our Sunday evening episodes, a lot to go based off of the article that I wrote that day in Winners and Losers. I did not write that article today. I've been a little bit under the weather today, so I'm doing my best to pretend that I am feeling good and having a good time right now on today's show, but we power through nonetheless. And so I was not feeling up to writing that today. And also, how does one write a winners and losers article when you only have losers? I mean, it would have been a really difficult article to write, considering, okay, a winner like Nick Folk, he kicked a field goal, which was good. Chris Moore caught another really impressive downfield pass. That was good. Is there any other player you can single out who had a good day?
Malik Willis didn't throw an interception or anything.
Hey, how about Mason Kinsey not muffing any punts?
There we go.
Good on him. Yeah, as Joey says in the comments, there were no winners in this game on the Titans. I could have just could have just gone full Cleveland media and written about how great the Browns looked in the winners portion, and then about how terrible the Titans looked in the losers portion. That would have been easier. But yeah, we're going to talk about today's game from a different standpoint than we typically do on Sundays. Not a winners and losers format, just a what went wrong format where we go position by position and don't really have, it's going to be a difficult show to do in the sense that it's going to be hard to go topic by topic and not just say they were really bad. I don't know what to tell you. Like, we're gonna have to find creative ways to explain how bad these different units were. And we would love, this can be a therapy session for you Titans fans in the comment section. We'd love to hear your input, any questions or comments you may have on the game. We would love to have a conversation with you today. Before we dive into it all, got to shout out our fantastic title sponsor here on the Hot Read podcast, Boom Boss, Tap House, and Craft Pizza. They have 3 Middle Tennessee locations. Our location in Spring Hill, Tennessee, just a short drive down the interstate if you're from the Nashville area. They also have a location in East Nashville and in Murfreesboro, as well as in Indiana and Kentucky. They are fantastic at what they do, and what they do is make delicious, delicious pizza. You got to check out the different options they have there. Pizzas, I guarantee you've never had the likes of before. They are 4-time winners at the Las Vegas International Pizza Expo for best vegetarian pizza, best gourmet pizza, best international pizza, best non-traditional pizza. They're also the only company in the country that can say that they have won best pizza in America twice at the International Pizza Championships. So they make great food. We love Boombas, and I know that you will too. Check out Boombas Pizza wherever you are. Find your nearest location, get yourself down there, and you can thank us later. All right, JT, let's get to the losers from the Titans 27-3 loss to the Browns. Let's just start with overall perspective. And JT, if you can help me out by keeping an eye on the comments, and I would love to talk with anybody that brings up a good point, but so stop me along the way. I just kind of want to give overall perspective on this game. It was a really bizarre sleepwalking performance to me. And I was tweeting about it during the game, but it was one of those outings where pretty early on you could just tell the Titans as a team were not moving quickly. They weren't moving with a lot of purpose. They weren't playing with a lot of heart. They seemed just out of sorts across the board. And it was pretty much every player on the team. They couldn't get anything going on offense. The defense was uncharacteristically poor. It was just a strange outing. And from that perspective, I guess you could say if you're scratching and clawing for silver linings here, sometimes in the NFL, teams just have bizarre, terrible outings that you just can't explain. And it's just you have a bad day as a team, or everything doesn't go your way. The ball does not bounce your way once in the game, and there's an element of bad luck that's combined with sluggishness, and maybe you're not mentally prepared for a game. Winning in the NFL is very difficult, and so sometimes that's the case. Now, whether that's what happened with the Titans today or not, only time will tell. But it was a very strange game for them. And it's an interesting juxtaposition to their other loss of the season in week one. We came on this show after the week one loss to the Saints, and I was not particularly concerned by that game. I didn't find that game all that upsetting from a long-term future team success standpoint. Because in that game, Tannehill had an outlier, horrendous performance, right? And the rest of the team showed a lot of good things. There were things you could point to and be like, if Tannehill just didn't have an all-time horrible performance today, they would have won this game, and we would have been saying a lot of good things about the way that this team performed in their season opener. This week 3 loss is significantly more alarming to me, and it's more alarming because it just nothing worked anywhere. Nothing was it was an all systems failure by this team where Tannehill was not really the issue today. And we'll get into that. A lot of people, and naturally people want to blame the most important player on the field when things are not going well. And Ryan Tannehill is an easy target for a lot of Titans fans. And they were taking aim on social media all day. I just did not come away from this game thinking Tannehill was anywhere near the top of the list of issues for this team. He didn't turn the ball over. He only had 1, maybe 2 passes that I can think of where he just truly missed. It was just a bad ball. And of course, how he's seeing the field, I can't really answer that until I get to watch the all-22 coaching tape later in the week. But it didn't read to me that like he just wasn't seeing things well. He was hardly given a chance most of the time. And I don't think that the quarterback position on this team, no matter who that person was today, I don't think that the situation the Titans were putting their quarterback in was conducive to success. Whether it's Ryan Tannehill, whether it's Malik Willis or Will Levis, whether it's somebody completely different, I just don't see. He could have been better. Yeah, like he could have been more of an elevator for this team. But what have we said time and time again? Ryan Tannehill is not. He's a trailer. He's a good trailer in the NFL. He's not a tractor quarterback. He is not going to pull the team. You've got to put the team around him to pull him, and he can do a lot of really great things for you. That is the nature of the limitations on his game. And so just a strange and alarming performance for them in a week 3 loss that in the first half, because the second half, it felt like they were pretty much out of it already after that first half, especially after the Browns get their second touchdown of the day, get to 20-3. That 17 points might as well have been 100 points based on the way the Titans offense was playing. That felt like an unbridgeable gap for them. And obviously that proved to be the case. But in that first half, this game was defined by a lot of wasted opportunities by this team. You have the Sean Murphy Bunting forced fumble recovery on the Cleveland 19-yard line. And then just like the Titans' first drive of the season in New Orleans, where Amani Hooker forces the fumble on the return and the Titans are already in field goal range and then get a field goal, but it's because they went 3 and out and had negative yardage. That's what they did here. They were on the Cleveland 19 after that forced fumble by Sean Murphy Bunting, -9 yards on 3 plays, and then a field goal, and the only points of the game for them. Big wasted opportunity in the red zone. That actually, I've been just now realizing that first play from scrimmage, that first down there from the Cleveland 19, was officially the first play from scrimmage inside the Cleveland red zone by any team this season. So congratulations, the Titans did accomplish that today. It's about the highest praise that you can give them.
There's a winner.
And even then, you got one play from the red zone because they immediately backed you out of the red zone and you had to kick from outside of the red zone. I also had written down, the offensive drive at the end of the game, or at the end of the half, rather, is the obvious one, right? You get down to the 11-yard line after a couple of really nice downfield throws and catches to DeAndre Hopkins and to Chris Moore. And then the one thing you can't do, and there's very few things in football viewing that are more infuriating than when this happens. When you realize that you're in a time crunch like this, you're in the red zone, you're trying to get 7, but you have to at least get 3. Okay, you can't get tackled in bounds depending on your timeout situation, but you cannot take a sack. It's the number one thing you cannot do. Anything but that has to happen. And then the Titans allow a sack there, and get no points at the end of the half. They had a perfect opportunity to get some momentum offensively going into the second half. I believe it was 13-3, so it would have been 13-6. They would have been within 1 score, and they just blow it. Andre Dillard, who we'll talk more about in a minute, gets blown by around the edge. Myles Garrett gets one of his 3.5 sacks today, crushes Ryan Tannehill, and the Titans go into halftime without capitalizing on their only decent offensive drive of the day. The other opportunity is the one where Deshaun Watson throws the ball backwards and has a 16-yard loss on that first down. And so you get into 2nd and 26, and the Titans defense is in a really advantageous situation, looking to be a 3 and out. And then you get another, like last week, where you had a defensive penalty behind the line of scrimmage and one downfield. You had another one of those today on that 2nd and 26. Was who I forget who it was. Somebody hits Deshaun Watson high, and gets an unnecessary roughness penalty. And then I think it was Nico Autry. And then downfield, Christian Fulton gets called for the pass interference, and it's an automatic first down. 2nd and 26, completely squandered. I think the Browns went on to score on that drive as well. So a bunch of missed and blown opportunities to define this game in the first half. The second half defined by the fact that the Titans were just in too big of a hole and could not get any momentum going. So a strange game, a bad game. And let's I want to move on now. We can talk about the offensive particulars here. But JT, what are some of the comments we have that we want to address?
Yeah, we can start with, as you said, the offense. We'll get into those, but just kind of wrapping up just kind of the whole game as a whole. Joey Turner says the Browns gave the Titans plenty of chances in the first half.
They did.
And they came away with 3 points, which I think definitely kind of just summarizes the entire game for them. A lot of missed opportunities on the field today. And then we get into a lot more of what you're saying with the offense from Jordan Lowry here, who said Chig had having a sophomore slump year, sort of, and then Trayvon Wesco being worse than Jeffrey Swaim, especially with his pretty poor performance today.
I don't know if Wesco being worse than Swaim is fair, but has he proven to be a dramatic upgrade so far? I don't think that's the case in the first. And again, his role is one that I'm going to withhold judging too harshly before I get to watch the tape back. But I thought that he did a better job in the first 2 games people were giving him credit for. He's also, his job this team is giving him a really difficult situation to begin with, having to chip constantly and help some pretty bad tackle play, as well as just the complexity of the different roles and assignments he's given when you watch the tape. Like, he's having to move around and do a lot of different things, juggle a lot of different things. So I'm not really shocked by his level of play so far.
Yeah, and then Joey Turner also just has a more Titans take as a whole here, saying this team has a very bad stink on it. 3 weeks where you can hardly see any positives. It certainly feels like week 1 and 3 are the truth, and week 2 was luck.
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult without more, again, a 3-game sample size. We're starting to get some, we're starting to rack up enough games, enough snaps of evidence where you feel like you can start to know a team. But, the Titans last year were 1-2 to start the year and had in that 3-game sample size had one absolutely brutal, horrendous loss to the Bills in week 2, even worse than this one. And then they went on to be 7-3. So, like, a month from now, 2 months from now, we may look at this team completely differently than we do today. I can't disagree, though, that right now it's hard to think that this team has a very high ceiling. I will, again, and I'm naturally an optimist, and I'm not saying this is what I believe, but if you're looking for the optimistic spin, here's what it is, right? We said before the season began that people need to, I said that people need to be patient with this offense because of how much had changed, right? The 3 big elements of this offense: new offensive coordinator, practically 2/3 of the offense is brand new personnel, and a brand new offensive system. Those 3 things we're always going to take some time to work. Will it ever work? I don't know. Right now, it doesn't look like it's going to trend positively anytime soon. But, again, that Tampa Bay team that won the Super Bowl in a couple of seasons ago with Tom Brady, they were 7-7 by week 14, and their offense looked pretty anemic at times for the first 2.5 months of the season. They take a long time to figure it out, and then they figure it out, and once it clicked, and things were off to the races. Again, I'm not saying that's what is going to happen with this Titans team, but I am saying when you have so much change offensively, it takes a minute to figure it out, to get your footing, to get your sea legs. And so I think that's something that is worth remembering as we watch this Titans team struggle to get anything going.
And as you say that, it is such a brand new personnel on basically this entire Titans offense, specifically the offensive line. And we can move on to that now, just talking about the offensive line here with comments by Kenneth, who said, I don't say this joking. I'm truly scared Vrabel will stick with Dillard as left tackle instead of trying Radens at left tackle. He considers currently Andre Dillard as Dennis Daly 2.0.
Dennis Dillard. Yeah, Kenneth, you should be scared because I that's what I expect him. I don't expect him to move. I mean, maybe by the end of the season, you have moved on to another guy at left tackle. But there's nothing in the track record with this Titans team with Mike Vrabel's personnel management to indicate that he's going to make a swift move away from Dennis Daly or away from Andre Dillard. Freudian slip there. Anytime soon. It's also, I think it's pretty easy for them if they're looking for reasons to excuse it a little bit. A game like today, you say, okay, well, he's going up against Myles Garrett, one of, if not the best edge players in the league. Of course, he had a bad day. Everyone has a bad day against Myles Garrett. He's one of the best players in the entire league. That's what happens. Now, then you say, okay, what about week 1 and 2? Because it was the same, like it was a lot of the same. But that's the kind of thing where they're going to be able to excuse this internally and be patient. And maybe they're right to be patient, but I don't see any indicator. Like, if that's the case, it's going to miraculously change because he wasn't great in camp and he hasn't been great to start the season. Before we move fully on to the offensive line, I do want to talk about just some general things on this Titans offense today. It was officially the worst performance as measured by total offensive yards by this Titans team since this is pretty crazy to me because there were some brutal dark age years there in the early 2010s where their offense was a bunch of nothing. But this was the worst outing for them in total offense since they left Houston for Nashville in 1997, they had just 94 yards of total offense in this game. And the Titans, of course, have now lost 9 of their last 10 games. They almost had more penalty yards today, JT, than total offense. They had 80 total yards of penalties, 94 total yards of offense. Hilariously bad. Just to compare to their opponent, the Titans had 94 total yards of offense. The Browns had 341 yards of total offense. They also got, this is uncharacteristic for the Titans, but it was certainly the case today. They got bludgeoned in time of possession. They did not do a good job of possessing the ball and keeping their offense on the field and giving their defense a break. Tennessee's offense only operated for 21 minutes and 31 seconds. The Browns were on the field 38 minutes and 29 seconds of the game. 2/3 of the game, the Titans defense is out there trying to defend this Browns unit. And so another shred of silver lining I have written down here in my notes. Again, I'm not saying this is something that you should really cling to, but again, 2 months from now, this may be the context that's like, okay, well, that's why. According to True Media, the Browns' defensive success rate through 3 games this season is 78%. It's the best mark for any team in weeks 1 through 3 since at least the year 2000. Like Jim Schwartz, their new defensive coordinator, former Tennessee Titan, defensive personnel, I forget his official title, defensive coach. He can't miss. He has got this group rolling. They are very talented up front and on the back end. It appears the Browns defense really has the goods right now. And we questioned before this game, maybe their defense was being inflated by facing 2 bad offenses. You could easily make the counter argument here that their defense is still being propped up by having played now 3 bad offenses. And, the Titans 94 yards of total offense it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Does this Browns defense actually rock, or does this Titans offense, as well as their other 2 opponents' offenses, just stink and it's making them look good? I'm guessing there's probably some truth to both sides of that coin. It's probably both things are true. And I think that this Browns defense is really, really good. It may ultimately be the best defense this Titans team plays all year long. I don't know if do any of our commenters have anything to say about Ryan Tannehill, because people online were not happy with me when I said that this game was not, this beating was not a result of Ryan Tannehill's level of play. An important distinction here. Just because it's not his fault does not mean he doesn't shoulder some blame. Like, he could have and should have played better in this game. He did not have a great outing, especially in terms of pocket management. His lack of, the dude he cannot navigate the pocket well at all anymore. He age-wise, like, that element of his game has disappeared completely, and he shows his age in that way. He's a bit of a statue back there right now, and his pocket management is really poor at times, and so he's not lending himself to this offensive line that's already struggling. He's not helping out in any way on that front. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's a lot of what the comments here. Kenneth says that he compares his athleticism to dip to what Matt Ryan was in 2022, which I don't think is all the way at the level of Matt Ryan.
Here's the thing: when he's intentionally moving, like when Tannehill takes off and runs, like on the triple option touchdown last week, he can still run well. He athletic when he is operating on the field as an athlete, as a ball carrier, he still has some athleticism, but it's in his pocket management, his movement within the pocket, where he looks so old. And it's kind of a weird square to circle there, but that seems to be the case. It's like there are 2 modes for him athletically, and in one, he still has a little juice when he's trying to actually run with the ball, but when he's just trying to be an athletic passer and navigate the pocket, he looks ancient.
Yeah, and then we also have, I believe it's Oak Vontae here saying that Tannehill doesn't galvanize this team with his play or his spirit. He lacks of passion. Belief is starting to permeate this locker room.
I don't know if I can agree with that. I'm not saying, you're welcome to your opinion. Maybe that's the case, but that's not been my experience. I do understand how fans struggle with how at the podium he is very like political, company man, doesn't really show a ton of emotion often. I understand that, wanting to see some more, like wanting to see a guy as pissed off as you are after a performance like this. I get it. Really, I do.
And then
I,
finally, Jordan here. Sorry, were you done with what
well,
you were
no,
saying?
I was just going to say, like, I just because he's that way publicly in press conferences does not mean that's the way that I see him operating and interacting with his teammates in the locker room and on the field at practice.
Yeah, and then Jordan, just kind of with the Ryan Tannehill can't move narrative that we are currently talking about. He says Ryan can't move. There was not anything he could do, but when he had an opportunity to complete a pass to Burks, he missed. And
Yeah, that's his biggest mistake today. That's the thing you can knock him for most, was that one pass. He threw it on the run. He needed to plant himself better to get a better throw off, I felt like, in the moment watching it. And he just misses Burks. But again, like that missed pass and catch was not the reason the Titans lost today. Not even close.
Yeah, and that's all we got on Tannehill, at least.
Okay,
right
so
now.
let me move on to the offensive line a little bit more, and just some numbers. They've allowed as a group 13 sacks in 3 games, which is a 74 sack pace year long. And as badly as you thought this Titans defense or offensive line performed last year, I'm not saying that they will allow 74 sacks this year. That seems unlikely. But last year they had 49 on the season, and that was a disaster class all year long. We were constantly talking about how the offensive line was single-handedly causing them to lack any offensive viability in a lot of games. If this keeps up, it's going to be that but worse this season. And so it's going to be one of those things that's truly a failure to launch. It does not matter how well your quarterback or your wide receiver or your tight ends or your running backs are playing if the offensive line is playing this poorly and protecting your quarterback this poorly. Myles Garrett had 3.5 sacks in this game, which is the second most for him in a game in his career. He had 4.5 in 2021 week 3 against the Bears. But a game in which you add a Myles Garrett accolade to his record book is obviously not a good thing. And the offensive line is hard to talk about on a Sunday night, right? Watching the game film, like I will talk more about it later in the week, I'm sure, after we've had a chance to break down some of the footage. But what it was obvious, and I'm sure you don't need to have seen watched the all 22 tape to understand, was that Andre Dillard is an issue. We talked a little bit about him earlier in the episode. I want to just talk a little bit more about what the Titans' options are with him. And by the way, I don't know, did you see his post-game presser, JT, in which he, is being very honest and candid about the conversation that he had with Myles Garrett after the game? I'm of split mind on this because a lot of people were clowning him in that video, responses to that video, retweets of that video. Just like you can't say this. Like, I would take this to my grave with me. Like, sure, Myles Garrett, just daddied you all day long, dog walked you for 60 minutes, and then was kind of a stand-up guy enough to come and talk to you after the game and tell you, like, give you some insight on how he beat you, basically. That's fine and good, and I'm sure that is something that Dillard truly did appreciate. But you can't say that out loud. It's not a good look. I get that standpoint from a lot of fans, but I also think that it's silly to me when fans, for example, like with Ryan Tannehill, it's like, fans want to see more, fire in his gut when they lose a game like this, and want to see him emotional and honest at the podium and not give the coach speak, quarterback speak, PC vanilla answer. But then a guy like Dillard gives you a moment of candid honesty in the locker room, and you clown him for, like, what do you want players to open themselves up to you more? Or do you not? I think ultimately you should, be more like, if you want more honesty and more openness from players and not just the ho-hum generic answers all the time, then don't be, so mean when they do open up to you. Like Ryan I'm watching lose my headphones here. Ryan Tannehill a couple seasons ago has that horrendous game against the Bengals in the playoffs, comes back that summer and talks very candidly at a press conference about how, he dealt with a lot of serious mental issues and, like, sought out counseling and stuff from that performance. And fans were relentless. They were relentlessly cruel. And you can kind of date back to that. Like, he had that press conference, and since then he's been very generic and and not detailed or, candid in his press conference. Like, he's been very political since then. So you're forcing these players into doing that kind of thing when you're gonna, like, why would they open themselves up to you if you're just gonna rail them for it? So like, I get it. I get why you're wanting to poke fun at Dillard, but do you want him to be honest or not? That being said, what are the Titans' options with Dillard? I've already talked with Kenneth about how he's right to be concerned that this team is not going to move on from Dillard anytime soon. I don't think that they will. Maybe they'll surprise us and make a proactive move. But if and when they do get around to having to move from him, and I can certainly say that at the very, very, very latest, we can pencil in Andre Dillard as top of the list of guys that we'll see the notification come across our screens next spring. The Titans have released or parted ways with left tackle Andre Dillard, voiding his contract and saving $7 million against the cap by not keeping him for a second year of his deal. If that's the latest that this happens, I don't think it's unreasonable to think things are so bad by the end of this season that the Titans or by the middle part of the season, that the Titans are starting to look for other options. We look to last year as an example with Dennis Daly. They take for, I think it was until week 14 in LA against the Chargers when they move on, or not move on from, but give Dylan Radins a chance in there at left tackle, and looks good until he tears his ACL promptly, which was like an of course moment. But if it took that long with Dennis Daly, what are you expecting them to do with Andre Dillard, who they went out with Daly? They were kind of forced into a situation with him. You have Taylor Lewan go down in week 2. You trade for him. He's the top of the bottom of the barrel, the slim pickings at that point, and you kind of have to roll with it. With Dillard, they went out and handpicked this guy early on in the offseason process. Like, they're not going to admit defeat on him so soon. So all of that parsing the situation and not getting your hopes up for them moving on from him, when and if they do, the two clear options they have to consider are Dylan Radins, who they did this with last year, eventually, and Peter Skoronski. Now, with Skoronski, I do want to point out, like, he is by far their best offensive lineman, in my opinion. I think that he showed you that in week 1. There's a tiny itty bitty little, maybe insignificant asterisk on this offensive line performance through 3 weeks, where it's like, they're playing really bad right now, but they're also missing their best player. Now, does missing your best player, who happens to be a left guard, like, is that the end all be all? No, definitely not. But you are missing your best player, and it's making it more difficult, for a guy like him on the left side, partnered up with Andre Dillard there on the left. I would imagine Dillard is in a better situation with a running mate in Skoronski, as well as we've liked how well Radins has played. Like, if Skoronski can be left on an island always, and Dillard doesn't ever have to help out on the inside with him, he's probably got more trust in him to interpret and handle the games that are run, the stunts that are run by the defense. Like, I think that he's more comfortable with Skoronski, who he's spent all offseason getting accustomed to playing with. And so the communication is probably better. The comfortability level is probably better. But having him gone for 2, like, they need him back. It's pretty clear that they need him back, in my opinion. When they do get him back, JT, I would consider trying him on the left. He's already on the left, on the left tackle position. I was, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I believe you were with me throughout the draft process before he was ever a Tennessee Titan on the notion that, hey, Peter Skoronski should be given a chance to play outside at the NFL level. Yeah, he's got really, really, really short arms for an NFL tackle. But you watch the tape in college, and the dude has the goods. He had the juice. He was able to manage. Like, it wasn't an issue for him in college. He was the best left tackle in the game. So why not just give him a shot at the NFL level? Maybe that proves to be his downfall, but maybe he's an outlier. There's always an exception that breaks the rule. And so that's what I would do. I'm not a huge fan of Radins getting out there at the left tackle position. I think that he's much more of a true guard type in the NFL. He also lacks a little bit of length, not quite like Skoronski does, but they both are below league average, below that 34-inch arm length threshold for tackles typically. But he's just, his play strength, his play style, he's never going to be that really, he's just not He's a strong man, obviously, but he's not very strong as far as NFL linemen go, and you can tell by the way that he plays on the tape. And I don't think that moving him outside is going to be a good idea given his play strength. I think Skoronski plays with much more strength in his core and his arms. His base is better. Like, I just think that he's fundamentally a better player that you give a chance out there. What say you, JT? Has anybody in the comments chimed in on this? What do we think about what the Titans should do at left tackle?
I not a lot of comments. I think a lot of people are of the same sentiment that giving Skoronski a shot outside is probably a good idea. And then moving like a Dylan Radins to left guard and keep
Radins at guard. Yeah, he's playing fine there right now. Just rock and roll with that.
I do just have questions because of, just like you said earlier, it took this team a very, very long time to move off Dennis Daly, mostly in part because they still believe that they could compete last year, despite how bad the left tackle was. And I think that if Mike Vrabel and this brass believes that they can still compete, like when Peter Skoronski comes back, and they would be fine with it, they're not going to change, because until the season is truly lost, then you're not going to experiment until then if you're Mike Vrabel, right? There's no reason for Mike Vrabel, even if it does get better in the short term here, like that's just not something I think Mike Vrabel would ever do, is experiment in the middle of a season, in the middle of a week before a game. Like it would be something that it would take like the benching of Tannehill to bring Malik or
I was about
Will
to say
Levis as a starter.
The fastest route to trying something new at left tackle would probably be them being 1-6 by week 8 or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, they're talking, it's Will Levis time. Let's see what he's got. Malik Willis, let's get him. Like, that it's true pack it in time for the Titans would be the quickest route to having those guys out there. And I agree with you. We're just, it's very easy to see. We are 1, maybe 2 weeks away from Peter Skoronski coming back, and Titans fans being confronted with this awkward situation, and the Titans brass, for that matter, being confronted with this awkward situation where Skoronski is back. Radins, who filled in for 2 weeks and looked good in doing so, comes out, and suddenly you're like, the 5 offensive linemen that you're rocking with now aren't your 5 best guys. Radins is, I think, pretty clearly better than Dillard. It's an issue. It's just an issue of supply and demand based on positions. And so if the Titans are truly hardline, Skoronski and Radins are interior offensive linemen. It's a shame that we have a surplus of serviceable interior offensive linemen, but they can't just magically be tackles. Then that's going to be the way that it is, and they're not going to play that way. But we're going to be confronted with this awkward situation where the 5 guys they're walking out there are clearly and obviously not the 5 best offensive linemen on this team, which probably then becomes even further complicated when you've had Chris Hubbard playing relatively well through 3 weeks now, and you've got MPF coming back after week 6, and now you've got maybe your top 5 guys out there are 2 of the top 5 guys on the team not out there starting. What's going on? Like, what are we doing? What's going on? Maybe NPF presents an opportunity. This is just coming to my mind, and I've not gone and looked at an NPF. I don't believe in college he ever played on the left side. And with Chris Hubbard, I have no idea if he has any left tackle experience. I don't believe so. But if you get MPF back and you believe that MPF and Chris Hubbard are actually your 2 best tackles, maybe that is the best case scenario for them moving on from Dillard, or giving somebody else a chance on the left side. You move one of NPF or Hubbard out there to the left side and see if those guys can be your bookends. I don't know. I'd have to look into whether or not they have any experience there on the left side, but that's something that I think if you're still having this level of play from Andre Dillard by week 8, when NPF can come back after the bye, you're going to have that conversation. There's going to be the rumblings of, look, now we've got 2 tackles available that are both better than Andre Dillard. Let's get him in there. Get that guy out of here. It's certainly something to consider. And we can move on now from the offensive line conversation, because we do have other things to talk about on this team. And the one last thing, actually 2 more things I want to talk about on the offense briefly, and then we'll get to the defense. This Titans run game is one element of this offensive operation in particular that has me concerned through 3 weeks. And primarily that's because this has been this team's bread and butter for as long as Derrick Henry has risen to ascendancy, at least, and really before, kind of just the entire history of the Titans, they have been a pounding the rock running team. They've not been that this year, not even close. I believe through 3 games, Derrick Henry is averaging like 14 carries and 52 yards or something a game, something rather poor today. I know at least in the first half, he was getting outsnapped pretty dramatically by Tyjae Spears. I don't know what the final snap counts on that came to. I'd imagine it was relatively 50-50 at best for Henry. I don't think he was on the field for very much. But he, in the first half, he had his worst half of football statistically of his entire career. JT, 4 carries, -7 yards for Derrick Henry. This Titans run game has been really poor so far this season. It does very little push up front, far too many defenders breaking into the backfield. These runners, for the most part, aren't even being given a chance. So when I say that the running game has been really poor, I'm really not blaming Spears or Henry, because when they've been given some daylight, given any breathing room to operate, they've looked good. In that first game, Derrick Henry looked good. We were surprised by how he wasn't, taking a really slow start to things and was playing ahead of our perceived schedule for him. And since then, it's kind of been downhill. But I think back to Mike Vrabel almost a week ago on Monday in this post-game press conference, jokingly talking about, I promise we're going to block for Tyjae Spears eventually. One of these days, we're going to block for him, and he's going to break off a 30-40 yard run. I could tell in that comment, like, sarcastic for sure, but there's clearly some frustration behind that remark. I can tell fundamentally he prides himself obviously on this team being a grinding, dominant team in the run game, and they've not been that, and that's bothering him for sure. But my thought on the state of their run game is that it's not all that surprising to me, because we knew this offseason they kind of changed their philosophy, did a 180 from a offensive line building standpoint. They renovated this offensive line almost entirely with guys whose MO was being a better pass protector than the guys that they were replacing, being stronger pass protectors statistically and historically in their careers than they were run blockers. And this idea that, okay, the Titans, they do a good job of teaching pass blocking or run blocking here in-house. They're gonna bring it. They've decided we just, for some reason, we can't get these guys to pass block very well. Let's bring in the guys that are good pass blockers already. We'll teach them how to run block. We can teach them how to do that. So far, that's not been the case. And so when you renovate your O-line with heavy pass protectors, which is ironic because they've not been protecting the pass well either. They've not been doing anything well. But that's at least what the idea was on paper. This was always a possible side effect. The run game took a little bit of a beating. And so with this level of offensive line play, I don't care who you are, Derrick Henry, Tyjae Spears, you can be the best running back in the league. You're not going to succeed with the level of disruption in the run game that this Titans team is already allowing on the offensive front.
Yeah, and just back to your point where you were thinking that the snap share for the first half of Derrick Henry was more 50-50, it was not even close, actually. Tyjae Spears outsnapped Derrick Henry in the first half 18-7.
Oh, no. So I knew that in the first half he was. I wasn't sure if by the end of the game it had leveled out. I
got you.
Think that it did. But
I don't think it did either. I think as the game got more and more,
got back to 50-50, but Henry did not get the lion's share of snaps, I don't think.
No, which I think it's very interesting because, as some people pointed out here in the chat, like, mostly in the run game, chipping the elite pass rusher moving forward worked well on one drive of this game, and then completely stopped because they kind of moved.
Can we talk about that? Yeah, they okay. That's what he's saying. Go ahead. They stopped. Why'd they stop? They ran in. I mean, they this was my next point. You took the words right out of my mouth, Vontae. Like, the coaching was lackluster in this game too, and the number one thing, like the number one example of that was what you were saying. That one good offensive drive, they get down the field, and they very intentionally, every single play, chip Myles Garrett with a tight end or with a running back. And then they get into the red zone, they get down to the 11-yard line, they stop, and immediately the obvious guaranteed outcome there is Myles Garrett gets home, runs right by the tackle, and kills the drive, kills Tannehill, kills their chance of getting any points before half. What are you doing, knowing what you have to do, demonstrating that you know what you have to do, executing what you know you have to do, And then you get into the red zone where I get, and I know our buddy James Foster was talking about this on Twitter. It is more difficult generally to chip in the red zone. Just the way that you have to utilize your personnel, the way that you deploy your personnel, utilization of a chipper in the red zone becomes more difficult. But it's still really not an excuse. It's not just because it's more difficult doesn't mean you can't do it. You can do it. And they just refused to. And it was very strange why that's something that we're definitely going to ask them about this week when we talk to Tim Kelly. We're going to ask him what the thinking was behind that, but it was strange and it was bad. Do we want to move on to the defense real quick before we get out of here?
Yeah, let's move on to the defense here. Well, actually, real quick before, Vontae also says time to elevate Thomas Odukoya and just chip people.
Should have been on the active roster to begin with, in my opinion. Clearly, they disagreed with me, but do it. He's the strongest player on the team. Get him in there. Just his whole full-time job is to be a glorified left tackle. Make it happen.
And then, we'll move on to the defense now, where Jordan Lowry pointed out Fulton was absolutely horrible. And why do our defensive backs not look for the ball when in coverage? They play the eyes, and it does not work.
Yeah, the secondary is a serious issue. It was a loser in week 1. It was a loser in week 2. Shockingly, it was a loser in week 3. And, the Titans, we joked about it on Thursday. It kind of ended up being the case. The Titans fixed Deshaun Watson. So congratulations. Well done. The rest of the league does not thank you for this. There's no way to put it besides it was a get right game for Deshaun Watson. He played a team that historically he has performed really, really well against, and he had his best performance as a Brown. Like I haven't even gone back and looked statistically to compare it, but I'm almost positive this is his best performance as a Brown. He was at one point in the game, and I'm wondering, I don't know if I wrote this down at the end of the game or near the end of the game. But at one point, if not the total game, he was 19 of 24, 79%. JT, if you wouldn't mind, just go check to see what his final passing numbers were. Do you have it pulled up?
I do. I already have it pulled up here.
Okay, so what did he end up going percentage-wise by the end of the game?
He was 27 of 33 for 289 yards with 2 touchdowns and had an average yards per target of or yards per attempt of.
Okay, so actually even he finished better than he 27 of 33, you said?
Yes.
Because he actually finished at 82% on the day passing. He had a Ryan Tannehill week 2-esque efficiency performance from a passing standpoint. He was very, very good in this game, and his job was made relatively easy in this game by guys like Christian Fulton. I'm struggling to wrap my head, and it's like I should have gone with my gut when we did the hot read purge episode, where I said, like, after a really, really promising camp, changing Titans fans' hearts and minds to start to love him again, Christian Fulton's going to have another disappointing bad season in his contract year. And I said it half as a joke at the time. I should have said it 0% as a joke. I should have just said it with my chest, because it's so far been the case. I don't understand, in all seriousness, how I watched this guy day in and day out consistently for 5 weeks in training camp dominate. And now through 2 games for him, having missed one with an injury, maybe today is proven to be like in week 1. I just simply don't know. He got cooked too often in week 1. In week 3 today, maybe coming back from that hamstring's not 100%. Like, I don't know. That's the only excuse you could possibly make. And it sounds like a bad excuse, but that's the only thing you could possibly think of, right? To be like, okay, this is why. It just does not make a ton of sense to me. And a lot of people in the comments, I tweeted that out. A lot of people in the comments were like, well, he's going against the Titans passing game. Like, of course he dominated NWI. Like, guys, no, like I didn't just see him dominate Colton Dowell and Chris Moore. He was dominating, Traylon Burks and DeAndre Hopkins. Does DeAndre Hopkins look like a bad receiver? He's been one of the only, if we had to make a winner's list, we at the top of the show, we should have included DeAndre Hopkins. He still looked good. He still looked like, I have no complaints with DeAndre Hopkins. He has been one of the brightest points on this Titans offense through 3 weeks. So the fact that Christian Fulton was hanging with him all camp long, and it was battles day in and day out with one of the best receivers in the league in DeAndre Hopkins, and now he's losing to guys that he shouldn't be losing to, getting cooked regularly. It's concerning. It's confusing. Maybe it's just the case that he's a practice player and is not really a dog out there when the rubber meets the road is the phrase that I was looking for there. I don't understand why that's the case necessarily, because in his rookie year, it's kind of been downhill since then. Like, he had flashes of really, really good, potentially elite cornerback play, and it's been downhill since then. And so I don't even know if I can say he's the best corner on this team anymore. He's got the most potential as the best outside corner on this team, but has he been that in practice? Has he played that out? No, he hasn't. And so it's just confusing. And because of this, I'm ready. This is a very popular narrative that I've seen from a lot of Titans analysts and media that I'm wholeheartedly endorsing. As much as we've talked about how great this Titans run defense is through 3 weeks and for the past really 17 games, and they have been great, and they are owed their due. It's time to quit talking about it. It doesn't matter. If you have an awesome run defense, that is sick. But if you suck over the top in 2023 in the modern NFL, where we love to pass the ball, people that pass the ball well typically are the winners. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are stopping the run. Teams don't care. They're happy to just throw the ball on you if you're going to let them. And so a lot of these performances where they've had really great rushing numbers in terms of efficiency stopping the run, they've looked really good, but you're omitting the other half of the box score. And if you look at the other half, you realize, well, maybe the other team didn't really try to establish the run and get the ball rolling on the ground because they didn't need to, because the more efficient way of moving the ball down the field, passing, was working so well that they said, why would we care to run the ball? We'll run here and there just to keep you a little bit more honest, but we're going to pass all over you today, and it's going to work, and we're going to beat you that way. That's what's happening with this team right now. So it's time to quit talking about the run defense being so fantastic. It is great, cool. It does not matter if your secondary is going to be as porous as the Titan secondary has been.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I mean, just like the icing on the cake was that deep pass to Amari Cooper, which basically kind of looked like the entire secondary just gave up.
You mean the blown one where he runs right by the defenders
for the touchdown?
Yeah,
not the one where not the one where the refs didn't have eyes or just like.
Well, yeah, and he got screwed there. Yes,
out of bounds. Yeah, that last one where it just like where he clearly just ran by everyone, but no one cared. Like it just kind of like.
I can't wait to ask them about that, because that clearly was a miscommunication of some sort.
It just kind of summed up the day, and I think it sums up just this week for the Titans. But they'll have a pretty big bounce back week as they are on to Cincinnati. And
they are on to Cincinnati.
It is Hot Read podcast rivalry week, I guess.
It is. And I don't know if you've seen the line. Tennessee, I don't know if Vegas knows. Tennessee, a 1.5 point favorite on the early line for that game.
I already took the plus 1.5 for the Bengals. So
I mean, you know, fair. To me, that clearly indicates Vegas is anticipating Joe Burrow not playing. If he was playing, I'd imagine that they'd be a pick 'em at worst. Maybe Vegas is just that out on this Bengals offense and actually defense, just this Bengals team. I don't think that they are. I think that they're probably out on who is the backup up there? Who's
Jake Browning? And
they just signed
Jake
one.
Browning, and they signed Bengals legend AJ
McCarron. Yeah,
Alabama.
That would explain
Crimson Tide legend
favorites to start. Yeah. But yeah. All right, with that, we can move on to some Titans news with producer JT before we get out of here. So without further ado, JT, let's get into the news.
Yeah, just one more note here on the Tennessee Titans having to do with Sean Murphy-Bunting, who did leave the game today because of a concussion, so he is now in protocol.
Which sucks, because he was really the only member of the secondary through 3 weeks who had, in each game, moments of really impressive play. He'd been balling a little bit out there. I was impressed, especially in week 2 and at times today. Like he was kind of up and down today, but there were some drives. He gets the forced fumble. He really sticky in man coverage, had some really nice reps. For him to go down and, miss at least one game now if he's in concussion protocol sucks for this Titan secondary that is already bleeding badly.
Yeah, then moving on to the rest of the AFC South and how they performed today. The Houston Texans whooped the Jacksonville Jaguars 37-17.
As we all predicted, of course.
Yes. Exactly, right? But see, one guy who is exceeding expectations is CJ Stroud, who has 121 attempts without an interception through the first 3 games. It's the most pass attempts without an interception in a player's first 3 games in NFL history. The previous record was held by Warren Moon with 103 total pass attempts. So CJ Stroud taking care of the ball, making Tank Dell look like a
making us look
absolute
dumb. Tank Dell absolutely making us look stupid.
It's a
Good
tough
for
scene
Tank
out
Dell,
here,
man.
but that connection looks for real, and so the Texans get a divisional win here. Another team that got a divisional win, the Indianapolis Colts, who led by Gardner Minshew, defeat the Ravens 22-19.
Conference win, not a divisional win. Conference win.
Yes.
But a win nonetheless, and an impressive win. Two. I mean, the what should be the dregs of the AFC South, the Bengals, the Colts, and the Texans, currently, according to the rankings, they're number 1 and number 2 in the division. So good for them, I guess.
And to be honest, I was kind of quietly hoping that this was going to be the classic Indianapolis Colts tie game that we get almost every single season now, it feels like. But they are able to eke out a win on the back of Zach Moss. He carried the Colts to victory today, literally had 30 carries for 122 yards, caught another 2 or 3 passes for 23 yards and a touchdown. Looked really good, and looks to be serviceable before Jonathan Taylor comes back. So that Colts team also looking like they're ahead of expectations when Anthony Richardson comes back from a concussion.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed with both of those teams considering the rebuilding state that they're in. Jaguars, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, their offense is, I mean, like, as bad as the Titans offense has looked, people were expecting the Titans offense to struggle this year. What's the Jaguars' excuse? As I jokingly said, to start the season, maybe this team is just a nice quarterback coach combo and a couple of shiny weapons, and then the rest of it kind of sucks. So far, it's kind of been the case.
I mean, Trevor Lawrence completing 27 passes on 40 attempts with 279 yards, a touchdown, and an interception just to put up 17 points shows more about this Jaguars team than it does Trevor Lawrence. So I'm with you there. And then one more just NFL news here. The Tennessee Volunteers legend, Joshua Dobbs, is playing.
And former Titan legend.
And former Titan legend, former Browns legend, former Steelers legend. Okay,
we can say the laundry list
all the legends. He is playing the Arizona Cardinals out of the Caleb Williams sweepstakes right now.
He really is. He's the worst thing to happen to the Arizona Cardinals.
It is.
Since they lost the Super Bowl? I'm trying to think of the last bad thing to happen to them. Since drafting Josh
Rosen.
Yeah, Josh Rosen. Like, is that
I would consider that more than the Super Bowl, probably.
Yeah.
But they defeat the Cowboys today, 28-16.
Another game we all had, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
You had that one
on your pick'em pool this week.
I did have it as a trap game. I did quietly put sprinkle some plus.
Well, you were talking about like this line's a trap, 12.5 point favorite for the Cowboys. No way, Jose.
Hey, I did. I
wish, straight up money line, baby.
I wish I had the cojones to actually put some money on it in the best bet gauntlet, but sadly did not.
No, listen, bet against the spread. Yes. Sorry. Yes. I thought you were saying to have the cojones to have picked them on the money line, which that's not cojones. That's crazy.
Insanity.
But sometimes insanity pays, I suppose.
Either way, Joshua Dobbs went 17 of 21 on the day for 189 yards, a touchdown.
Young man is balling. He's dealing out there.
And then he rushed 6 times for 55 yards. So it'll be interesting to see if he can continue to keep them rolling. And maybe no longer are they the absolute lock to get the first overall pick, because there's a team from Chicago that looks just as bad, if not worse.
If not worse, the Cardinals have managed to score all 3 weeks. Like, their offense has looked actually kind of promising at times. These players are playing, for their careers, and they're, the coach down there, I'm totally blanking. Jonathan Gannon. Thank you. People were making fun of him, and rightfully so, because the dude is a cringe lord. Those videos of him are tough, right? But this guy has a fire in his gut. I don't know what to tell you. This dude takes the bus to work.
He takes the bus to work.
He's got a fire in his belly. He's out here balling. And they've been frisky in all 3 games. Like, this team's gonna win some games this year, dude. And maybe Jonathan Gannon maybe should get like a third party security team, because Cardinals ownership may put out a hit on him for ruining their very intentional tank. But good for Josh Dobbs, man. Young man is out there dealing. He's an offensive weapon, a unit. Love to see it. He's really fun to watch, genuinely, right now.
Honestly, he kind of is just taller Kyler Murray, and it's working. You know, I
taller
like
Kyler
the way he just like reads the pocket and then runs like at the same way that like Kyler Murray does. I'm like, I'm
He's
just watching
sneaky
a
athletic,
taller
man. I don't think anybody was ever like, oh, Josh Dobbs, like he's a dual threat. He's right now he's a dual threat quarterback. I'm impressed.
He really is. And now we can move on to the most important part of the episode, the recap of this week's Best Bet Gauntlet. Currently, right now, on the day, I am 2-1, cashing both the Bills -5.5, as well as what was the other team? The team that I did not win on for sure, though, was the Broncos at +6.5, who get absolutely
they only lost by
destroyed.
50. Don't worry. They only lost by 50.
This is a pretty bad line. Either way, I cash on the Bills -5.5 and the Patriots -2.5. Currently awaiting the Steelers game, which I had them as 2.5-point dogs. They're winning currently by 16 points, so feel pretty good about that one to take me to 3-1 on the week. Easton, however, going to be trying to fight on Monday night for a 500 above 500 week.
Right, I need Monday night to go my way. We'll be 3-2 each on the week.
Yes, as the Titans spread did not hit, the Falcons spread also did not hit.
But then that's on me.
But then on the Colts line, as well as what was the other line that you had? I forget.
I had it pulled up right here. I won Colts +8 and also had Seattle -6.5. Both
Seattle
of those teams
-6.5
cover there. The two big wins and two big. I mean, I didn't sweat any of these 4 bets. They were all comfortable one way or the other. And then we're our first head-to-head of the year. Philadelphia and the Bucks tomorrow will be the deciding factor, and see whether this week is another JT win or if it's a draw and we move on to week 4.
Yeah, either way, we'll have to see. And that's going to finish up our news segment for today.
All right, that is JT with the news, and that is our show today. Appreciate everybody tuning in with us live. We'll be back on Wednesday. I think we're going to do an interview Wednesday, JT, and the guest is TBD. I still have to confirm whether or not we can make that happen. But if not, we'll find something else to talk about. I would love to have a guest to talk some Titans on Wednesday, so tentatively planning on that. And then, of course, Thursday, we'll be live once again at Boom Ba's Craft Pizza and Tap House in Spring Hill, Tennessee. We'd love to have you out. We're probably going to be doing another gift card giveaway for the first person to show up and say hello and get some free food on us. So make sure to have that on your calendar. If not this week, at some point this year, come on out if you're in the area. Come hang with us. Watch some Thursday Night Football at Boom Ba's. Until Tuesday afternoon, when we tape live our Wednesday show for producer JT. I'm your host, Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you then.